Let's jump into this first story. So definitely we're going to get to, I want to, get into the nitty gritty of Wikipedia because I was basically ragging on Wikipedia and then you tweeted at me and then I was like, yes, let's talk about, Wikipedia. But we do have some breaking news that I want to get into first. From The Wrap, Twitter permanently suspends Project Veritas' James O'Keefe. O'Keefe says he plans to sue the platform for defamation following the suspension. Twitter permanently banned James O'Keefe Thursday. The Project Veritas founder spent the preceding days posting videos taken of a CNN employee without that employee's knowledge, in keeping with his organization's practice of covertly recorded content. Copy editor, guys. But in violation of Twitter's policy. O'Keefe, who had over 900,000 followers at the time of his suspension, told The Wrap that he plans to sue the social media platform. Quote, "The account you referenced, James O'Keefe III, was permanently suspended for violating the Twitter rules on platform manipulation and spam," a Twitter spokesperson confirmed. "As outlined in our policy on platform manipulation and spam, you can't mislead others on Twitter by operating fake accounts, and you can't artificially amplify or disrupt conversations through the use of multiple accounts." That's an interesting statement to make because now James could sue for defamation, assuming it's not true. The rep declined to elaborate on the claim that O'Keefe was running multiple fake accounts, including how many he was running or how they were used. In a statement, O'Keefe said, "I am suing Twitter for defamation because they said I, James O'Keefe, operated fake accounts. This is false. This is defamatory, and they will pay. Section 230 may have protected them before, but it will not protect them from me. The complaint will be filed Monday." That reminds me of Watchmen. You guys, have you ever seen the movie Watchmen?
Yeah, I have.
Or read the comic at all?
I think I did once. A little bit of it, anyway.
It just reminds me of when Rorschach is in prison and he's like, "I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me." And it's not a good one-for-one analogy, but basically, they started a fight with somebody who was looking for well, I shouldn't say James was looking for a fight, but ready to win a war.
Yeah, he only goes to war when he's going to win. That's what I've learned about James O'Keefe.
He's been going to war. He's been going to battle, I should say, to win this war. So you may have heard he sued the New York Times.
Oh, yeah.
Now he's also going to sue CNN. So here's the next bit of this story, which will get us into the talk of censorship and fake news and things like that. This is according to Newsweek, James O'Keefe to expand his war on CNN with lawsuits, more video. Controversial undercover journalist and scourge of the left, so saith Newsweek, James O'Keefe appears to be waging a full-scale war on CNN that includes not only the undercover videos he's known for, but also a series of planned lawsuits against the news network and its anchors over issues that may not even involve him or his nonprofit organization. O'Keefe told Newsweek he will soon sue CNN and two of its journalists, Brian Stelter and Ana Cabrera, for defamation in a report about Twitter permanently banning Project Veritas. The February segment featured Cabrera accusing Veritas of promoting misinformation and calling a group of conservative activists, none of which O'Keefe says is true. Twitter reportedly banned Project Veritas over an anti-doxing policy after the group confronted a Facebook executive outside of his home. In the same February segment, Stelter claimed Project Veritas violated multiple rules. Meanwhile, O'Keefe posted video of CNN, so this I think most people are familiar with. Here's a statement from James. He said, "We are suing CNN, Brian Stelter, and Ana Cabrera, and we are going to represent others in defamation suits against CNN. We are going to launch a division for lawsuits," O'Keefe told Newsweek. I wonder where he got that idea.
I like that idea. I believe we brainchilded that here on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Well, his is a little different, but when he was on the show, we talked about the People's Defamation Defense Fund or something to that effect. So when these news outlets start writing fake stories, there is an advocate to protect you from the media, the smears. As we get into this space where everyone's a public figure, it becomes harder and harder to sue. For instance, Nicholas Sandmann in the Covington Catholic case, they argued he was an involuntary public figure because someone filmed him standing on stairs, and now he was in the public spotlight. It's insane we've come to that point where basically no one is protected anymore. So if Project Veritas is doing it, I'm stoked. This guy's, winning some battles.
There's a huge need for it, and I can only say that they eventually help give the same treatment to Wikipedia. Frankly, there's been so many people who have been defamed by Wikipedia, and there hasn't been any recourse. I remember back in 2006, I think it was, or 7, something like that. John Siegenthaler Sr., the father of John Siegenthaler Jr., I believe he's a co-founder of USA Today or so, something like that. And the Tennessean, he was the publisher or the editor. Anyway, very distinguished gentleman, elderly, retired. And they had essentially defamed him by saying that he had, gone to live in the Soviet Union back in the day or something like that. And it was bad and it was totally false. And he basically criticized me over the phone back then. And I felt bad. I really did. It's like I took personal responsibility. And that's one of the things that made me realize that, real people are harmed by this sort of thing.
When did you, so look, I guess in the context of James and all this,
yeah,
I think he's someone who has seen the lies and the smears firsthand for a very long time.
Sure.
I mean, so I went to Wikipedia and I looked up Project Veritas, and it says definitively they produce deceptively edited videos.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the source for this? And I click it. It actually links to like 24 different articles. Mm-hmm. The problem is the word deceptive is an opinion, not a statement of fact. But Wikipedia is an encyclopedia supposedly showing you the facts. So I think for James, he just finally was sick of it and said, let's go to war and start fighting back, which he is. I'm curious. I mean, that story about this guy from USA Today, that was the first moment you realized that, defamation was occurring?
No, I of course I knew that there was defamation going on before that, but he really brought it home to me because he was actually a victim, and he was a distinguished old Southern gentleman, and he was criticizing me personally. So that's what really made it hit home. It didn't matter at the time that I was actually starting a competing website. I still took responsibility for Wikipedia. So
I don't understand why James hasn't launched a nuke against Wikipedia right now. It says on Wikipedia, Project Veritas, purpose, disinformation.
Wow.
Outright. Yeah, they say far right activist group. The group produces deceptively edited videos.
Yeah.
So I think this is
that
24.
materially damages his reputation. And the thing is, Wikipedia does that to a lot of people now, right? And they're hiding behind Section 230. They're hiding behind that protection. And there is absolutely no recourse that anybody has due to the legal framework in which Wikipedia operates. I've known about this for a long time, and I have wondered, what's it going to take to change? And maybe it's somebody with relatively deep pockets and lots of rich friends actually going after them in a big way. And
you don't seem particularly, well, I haven't known you that long, but you don't seem particularly biased, right? You're I think you tweeted in defense of James O'Keefe on about him getting suspended.
Sure. Well, in defense of him being suspended.
I'm sorry. In defense of him,
yeah,
in relation to the suspension, saying James should not have been suspended.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I think he shouldn't have been suspended. Yeah.
Just recently off Twitter.
But I mean, I wouldn't agree that I'm unbiased.
Well, what I mean to say is, we all have our biases.
Yeah.
But you don't appear to be a tribalist, like staunchly defending the conservatives for any reason.
Absolutely not.
So that's why I think it's important to make the distinction. We're talking about what Wikipedia was supposed to be.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what your original vision for it was and how it strayed from that. At least that's my opinion of
what. Can you tell us about it? Like, when did you start it? How many of you were there, and what was the vision?
Right. Well, I don't know. How long do you want me to go into this? Because it's a long
like,
we have a
story.
2-hour show. We need 10 minutes.
I'm thinking about it when you're 17. Like, where did it come from?
Okay. Well, I won't go into too much detail, but I'll give you, because this is a big enough platform, probably a lot of people who are listening to this have not heard the story. So I'll just tell it again. Basically, I got to know Jimmy Wales in the mid-1990s. He ran discussion group for fans of Ayn Rand.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And well, he used to be a hardcore objectivist / libertarian. And well, we can talk about that later, whatever. And I actually, I got to know him a little bit. I wouldn't say that we ever became friends, but we were good acquaintances and we were friendly. And I actually met him in person a couple of times back in the mid-1990s. And then about, I guess, at the end of 1999, early 2000, I was deciding what I was going to do with this website that I had called Sanger's Review of Y2K News Reports.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I made some proposals and sent it out to different acquaintances. He was one. And he said, why don't you come to work for me? I want to start this free public contributed encyclopedia built on the model of like Linux, so open source, except it's not open source, it's open content. And he gave me stuff to read. And I said, yes. I mean, this is like, I actually have, to answer your question, dreamed about things that I could do with a philosophy degree if I didn't want to become a professor, which eventually I decided not to do back in like 1996. And one of them was an encyclopedia editor. And here somebody's offering me the opportunity to start my own encyclopedia. Cool. And it was really cool. So that was my job, basically, to start something. He had the domain name, it's called Newpedia, and I organized a group of hundreds of PhDs. And it was almost like organizing a whole college, really, because there were different departments and there were quite a few different people in the different departments and so forth. But I sort of worked with these people, and being academics, they like things being very regimented and top down. And that's the system that we ended up with. Negotiating with them, we ended up with a system that had 7 steps. And it was a lot of work to get an article through that system. So in the end, we realized, I shouldn't say in the end, close to the beginning, actually, we realized, we were well agreed that there needed something. We needed something to make it a lot easier for people to contribute, just the average person. So I cast around for different ways of allowing other people to contribute. And I eventually, a friend of mine, and this was January 2nd of 2001, he told me about WikiWiki software, the WikiWiki Web. That's the original wiki. Portland Pattern Repository. It's a repository of software programming patterns. And then that same concept of a sort of like a public bulletin board, anybody could write anything they want and edit anything, and yet somehow magically it works. Okay. And he explained how and why it could work. And I said, wow, this actually might be a way. We should try this out, because the software was free. So that same evening, I went back, and I think Ben Kovitz is the name of my friend. We had a Mexican dinner, and in which he explained all of this to me. I went back to my apartment and wrote out a one-page proposal to Jimmy Wales, and said, can you guys install this software for me to use? And so a couple of days later, that was done. And so I just went to work like describing what a wiki encyclopedia would be like. And it changed the culture. WikiWikis had been around for 6 years before that. So there was already a sort of internet culture surrounding wikis. So we had to sort of change that and reappropriate not just the software, but also the culture for the purpose of creating an encyclopedia. And I was just amazed that, like, after the first month, despite a lot of people being very skeptical about it possibly working, especially the relatively straight-laced PhD editors of Nupedia, they didn't like the idea at all, and sort of Jimmy Wales himself was kind of in their corner in the beginning, and I said, well, okay, we're going to have to relaunch this, because originally it was going to be the Nupedia wiki, right? It was a different course of or source of content for Nupedia. That's what it was supposed to be. And I said, okay, well, if you guys don't want it associated with the Nupedia brand, then we'll just relaunch it under its own domain name. And I came up with Wikipedia. We registered that. And originally, it was Wikipedia.com, because the whole enterprise was started by Bomis Inc. It doesn't exist any longer. And they were a startup of the old .com boom, the late 1990s, and they were well funded through ads, and then basically the funding disappeared, even as Wikipedia was taking off, even in that first year. So basically, in that first year, everyone was amazed at how well it was working. Even just like a month into it, people were just excited to participate, and we observed after a few months how Google would spider all of the articles, the new articles in Wikipedia, and there was a sort of like a stair graph of the growth of Wikipedia after the Google spider hit the site. There would be a bump in both activity on the site and just new people working on the site. And so it looked like a positive feedback loop. And I thought this can't be true. It's like too good to be true. But it was truly a viral phenomenon.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The more articles that get written, people search for things. There's a one-stop shop that has that subject. So Google probably favored Wikipedia as the parent domain. And then whenever something got searched for, because Wikipedia existed, it treated it probably like a news source.
Yeah, you got it exactly. That's pretty much how it worked. I don't know. Perhaps at some point Google made some special decisions that increased the overall ranking of the Wikipedia articles. The page rank algorithm was simpler back then, and who knows? It doesn't really matter. I think in the beginning it was just a lot of excitement about the whole idea.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I guess. Very optimistic.
For sure.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.